All right. Welcome to our daily COVID-19 update. It's April 4th, Wednesday, right? Wednesday, April 4th or April 8th? April 8th, not April 4th. April 8th.
April 4th.
The sundial says it's about 5:03 right now.
That's what the sundial says. 5:03 on the East Coast. And I'm here with Chris Macksey of Prefix Accounting and Dan Luthi of Ignite Spot. And today we're going to provide an update on PPP, what else, and also talk about short-term, week-by-week cash flow planning that you need to start doing if you haven't already, and also some short-term monthly, because even if you get approved for this loan, what we're finding is the money's not going to come to you for a little bit of time. So you may need to make sure that you set yourself up to still run and operate on the cash you have now. So Dan, why don't you kick us off with the topics?
Yeah, no, so totally first things first. I mean, we haven't received any new updates as of last night from any legislation, any SBA, anything from that standpoint. So no major guidance or adjustment that we have from that standpoint. So I think that's helpful, right? I mean, at least for most of us who are trying to determine the next piece, the hope now is that banks are speeding up the process and getting things moving. The biggest confusion or biggest frustration I'm seeing across the board with my clients or with our own firm or with family or things from that standpoint is, number one, we're not seeing enough communication from banks on where you're at in the process. There are some people out, there are some lenders out there, and I think more the fintech space is saying, hey, here's where you're at. Here's, we've received it, you're on the queue or anything from that standpoint. But even lenders are not coming in and saying, hey, we've received your application. We're going to get to you within the next 24, 48 hours. Or even if they are, most of those are completely being blown through, which I think is causing a lot of frustration for people on how they determine what they need to do for their business through that process. Because for some of these people, if they get cash this week, it's a whole lot easier to feel at ease in making decisions for their business over the next 2 months, right? We now can make strategic thought processes on how to deal with cash because the majority of what they're worried about on the outflow is being taken care of. They still have people in their office or they still have people in their warehouses. They're able to continue to function and move forward. The problem though is that when you don't know if this money is coming to you and your sales have dropped so much and your receivable cycles have dropped so much, it makes it really difficult to try to decide, do we wait this out for another week or 2 weeks, or do we have to start making some really tough decisions and laying people off in order to be able to try to conserve the overhead or the cash that we have, because the PPP is only allocated for a majority of that function to payroll. The difference becomes a loan. Right now, people are getting rid of their free cash flow that they have on wages. They're hoping to be able to recollect. And so it's just this mind game that I think people are going through. And I don't know if you guys have felt the same way in clients that you've worked with or communicated with, or what kind of approaches that you guys have dealt with through that process. But before we dive into just cash conversations and how we best strategize over the next 2 weeks, I'd love to hear from both of you to see what you guys have dealt with or seen over the last couple of days or 24 hours even.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you right now. I have a couple of banks that we've lended out to. One of them has been pretty good at communication. The other one is giving me less than one sentence responses to everything. And I have 5 or 6 loans tied to this one account, and I get one sentence responses. So, that's unfortunate. As far as for our client base, a lot of our clients have already reduced their employment, laid people off. They've already had conversations with their landlords. They've tried to reduce all of their expenses that they can. So right now, they don't have a lot of money going out, and I think that everybody's holding on to cash, only paying the bare minimum until they figure out what's going on with the PPP, which I think is the right thing to do. Until you know what the hell is happening, the only thing or when this money's coming in. Only pay what you absolutely have to. And if you can get a little, another few days before you pay this bill, do that. And so that's really where we are right now for most of our client base.
Definitely. How about you, Michael?
Yeah. So one is first assessing what does the landscape of your business look like today for the rest of the year. So you need to see if your business set aside the PPP loan. Does your business, can it still operate? Can it still do business in this environment? To me, the PPP loan is a nice bonus. It's a great opportunity, but if your business can only survive if you get something like it, then I would want to ask the question, why? Why would this have to exist in order for you to still exist? The better way to look at it would be, what adjustments do you need to make to where you could still survive this without a stimulus? You could still get through this as a business. Do you have a product or service? Do you have an operations that can withstand a pandemic or a crushing move in the economy? Okay. And if not, why? Ask the question why, and what could you do with your business so to where you could still do well, or you could still at least survive without money, without something like this. So that's a question one, is what adjustments you have to make to your business. So for some businesses, it's just revenue. There's revenue declines, but otherwise they're doing fine. And for others, they need to make some hard decisions where their revenue decline is so drastic, they need to start making some hard decisions about who really needs to be let go on their team, which customers of theirs were great, but now are teetering or shut down, and they're not going to get paid their AR, or they're not going to get paid that fixed monthly contract they had with them. So I would first look at, the first thing I would look at is, okay, what's the state of the business? Get all your leaders together. What's the state of the business? Do we have a going concern? Can we get through this? And then what do we need to do to get through this? Start with your customer list. I would go through your AR list. I would be go proactively reaching out to the AR list that makes up 80% of your AR. And I would go out to reach out to them, see how they're doing, and figure out an incentive to get their cash in your bank account sooner. So if it's, hey, if you're able to pay most or some of this up front, I'll give you 5% discount, 10% discount on the AR, right? Give them some incentive, because at the end of the day, cash is king right now. For most companies, cash is king. So it's better to get something at 5% decrease than nothing 90 days from now if that business has to close. So come up with an incentive. It's a positive incentive.
You both dove into some really interesting topics, though, right? I mean, Chris started with the expense side, diving into, let's talk rent first. I mean, right? I mean, rent's the number one. Outside of wages, rent's usually the number one killer for a business when they're struggling with cash flow position. And so, yeah, definitely. I mean, first things first, call out to those landlords and be like, hey, here's where we're at.
Right.
We've seen this much reduction in sales. Either you're going to renegotiate terms with me, or you're finding a new tenant, because I can't continue on with what we're doing. I mean, plain and simple, right? And depending on your industry, you've got a little more weight on that process. I mean, restaurants, it's going to be a whole lot easier. We have nobody physically coming into our restaurant. We're down 40% or whatever it is, or 90%. You can really create some deep connection from that standpoint too. With that being said, also, I think one of the questions that always comes into place is, as a landlord, you're usually coming in and saying, well, can we just renegotiate and extend the lease or tack it on to the end of it?
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to want to feel like, hey, maybe that's a viable option because hopefully we can stay alive.
Yeah.
Other situations, though, you have to look at it and say, I don't even know if I'm going to be alive in that period of time. I don't want to also put this landlord in the wrong sense of, or the false sense of hope of what's actually happening with this too. So this is one of those moments where I feel like you have to be real with people, right? I mean, as you're making the decisions on your business, you have to be real with your vendors and saying, there's no chance I'm going to be able to commit to this beyond where we're at. Just like in my business, where you got to evaluate AR, you've got to evaluate your customer base as a landlord too, and determine where your limitations and where your breaks are on those. And everybody should be asking.
Yeah. And really, in the landlords, they've all been able to reach out to their banks.
Yep.
Mhm.
If they have a mortgage on the property, and most of the time they're getting a deal.
Oh yeah. Well,
The
they're
banks are
getting
dealing with
deferred
it.
or just wiped, right?
Yeah.
For months.
Right. And they
The
have
other-
an asset, a collateral asset that's worth value right now.
Yep.
Now, if I'm a landlord, I'm worried that the asset value is going to go down the longer this pans out, because there's going to be vacancy rates going up, default rates going up.
Completely.
So that's
Right.
and especially if you're a landlord or a commercial property owner where retail and restaurants was your primary
Oh yeah.
customer.
Yeah, if you're mixed use commercial right now, and you have a restaurant or a retail space in the corner of your building, it's not like you're going to be able to evict these people and replace them with another restaurant.
Right.
Yeah.
Nobody else is coming there. Nobody
Right.
else.
Right. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
you know, would you rather work a deal with somebody who says, look, I need 50% off, I need a delay,
Mhm.
but I'll be here if I can recover out of this, versus
Definitely.
trying to get them out, which is going to be impossible right now. I don't know how you're going to do that. And secondly, who are you going to replace them with? So
And to that point, there's a whole lot of places that are putting restrictions on kicking people out right now, whether
Yeah.
it's homes or whether it's office
Businesses,
suites or things
yep.
like that. And businesses, there's restrictions on what they can do. And so, and it's not to be the point of sticking it to people. This
No.
is an assessment on, I mean, we're all very clear. We're honest people. And that's how you should be approaching this through this process.
Yes.
Like, don't be trying to work something just to try to save a dollar, because that's, the other person on the other side is going through the same crap you're going through in most cases, right?
right.
So we have to be willing to negotiate the right thought process with that. So even outside of your lenders or your landlords, you may have to do that with some of your vendors as well.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
you're going to have those conversations saying, hey, you gave us inventory, we agreed to a term and price from where things are at. I need 10% off for this to make material sense for me, because here's what I've seen over the last 3 weeks of my sales, and here's what I'm seeing that inventory is actually going to move. Let's have a real conversation about what that means and how we can work through it. If you want me to send it back, great. Send me those, send me those RMA labels or send me those return labels. I'll ship them right back to you right now, so that you're not worrying about me being that person that's holding the process on the end or
Right.
whatever it is from that standpoint. Be comfortable enough to have those kind of conversations. And again, it's not saying we're closing our doors. It's saying I have to evaluate what I can and can't do for my organization, knowing that you're going to have to make some tough decisions as you work through that process.
Yeah, extending your AP cycle, extending it so that, because you came into this with bills due, then monthly bills committed.
Yeah.
And then you came into this with customers AR past due or due, and monthly customers committed. And the reality is you got to stretch AP to the people, you got to pay the people that's necessary to operate and still see if you can make a deal with them. And then you got to stretch the rest. And then you've got to give an incentive to those customers. You don't want to be a hard jerk, but
Yeah.
you want to say, hey, look, I know we're all going through this. Can I somehow incentivize you to pay me early and give you a discount, or to pay me in two, in a payment plan just to get something in? If there's an incentive you can give, you might be the first person offering them that than other people that they owe money to.
Yeah.
And so that makes you a little more human, because we're all going through this. But I think the hard part for a lot of people is those who have they should have furloughed or terminated, and they're still waiting.
Yeah.
And the reality is you got to make a decision on the furlough termination now, because you can bring people back if you get the
Correct.
PPP loan. But the risk is they might not want to come back. That's the other thing you have to face, is you have to face the reality that you might have team members, the stress of being laid off or furloughed, or the stress of the pandemic in general, might put them in a place where they just want to be home with their family right now. And you know what? At the end of the day, if we really want to preach and believe that culture and our employees should take care of their families first, which is what we would do as business owners, then we need to live that out and say, yes, you need to take care of your family first. And if that's the best thing for your mental health, for your family, then yes, go ahead and do that. And so you got to figure out a plan if some of your employees who you did let go don't want to come back.
I think one thing that's really important about that too is we talk really in general in this conversation. And so some of these can apply to, restaurants, some of it can apply to manufacturing, some of it can apply to professional services and things from that standpoint. So, you really have to understand what you've done and how you've gone through your business over the last 6, 12, 18, 24, 36 months from that standpoint to give best assessment. But I think you're right in that framework of, as you evaluate those things and make the decisions, from a manufacturing standpoint, or even from a service-based function where you're actually physically, like a service, like repair and maintenance type function, you can only clean warehouses and count inventory for so long, right? Truthfully, I had a conversation with a client the other day where they're pretty much just dead because they service restaurants in, repairing the maintenance of their equipment. They've counted inventory cleanly for like 2 weeks, as slow as humanly possible, in order to kind of work through that. And, great to to the business owners for, working through that process, trying to understand and figure things out. But they had to make some tough decisions of like, we don't have anything. So what do we do? And in those situations, just like Chris mentioned, you got to make that decision. It may make sense to furlough people or lay people off while you're applying through this process. Because like we started the conversation with, it could be 3, 4, 5 weeks before you see a dime from the SBA on this, PPP plan. That's not even if you decide to go for the EIDL and get things from that standpoint, but through the PPP plan, it may be that long based off of how well the communication has been going from a large majority of lenders that we've seen through. And so deciding that is crucial. But I also think, just like Michael said, talk culture through that space and understand what your culture is. One of the largest accounting firms in the United States, BDO, they claim number 5 position, right? Yeah. Cutting a percentage right off top, like 10% or something like that across all employees.
They tiered it in based upon payroll level, but those things have major culture impacts. I think it's something to think about here. But I'm also going to say, you may have to make the hard decision right now that survival is more important than culture, and you'll rebuild your culture later. I don't want for us to sugarcoat this either, right? There is that hard decision sometimes of what's more important, maintaining my culture or surviving. That's a really hard one, right? Because it may not be who you are before, but you have to throw everybody on unemployment, even though that wasn't the right thing. Yeah. Or if you have the opportunity to come back, your employees might be making more on unemployment, but you need to call them back anyways as the right decision as a business. Now, I think all of us can say employees probably aren't going to be super happy with you. If you go and call them back and they're making quite a bit more on unemployment than you were paying them, they're not going to be the most thrilled to come back to work, right? But that's not saying that's not the right thing to do either. Especially as you look at your PPP loans. If you decide to go the PPP loan route, yet you already had laid them off, you start looking at the full-time equivalence calculation, you may need to call them back and you may need to go back into operation because that's the decisions you made, right? And if not, then even what you pay out is not going to be forgiven. So I think it's really important to start understanding those things and start prepping your team for decisions that are going to have to be made. And I think over communicating here can be really, really powerful, right? Like just over communicate, let your employees know the cold hard facts.
I think that's a really good point in just how you present, right? If you're coming in rainbows and unicorns all day long, telling everything it's going to be great, we're going to work through this, everything's going to be awesome, or whatever it is. And then you come in with just this whack mentality and now half your staff is gone or all of them are laid off. Those people are going to be much less inclined to want to come back and work with you when you finally have the cash to be able to make those steps forward. They just are. People take that, whether they understand it's for the right reason or not. There's a lot of emotion for people through that process. Just like all of us are feeling right now with our bankers, right? We're all feeling like, well, I thought I had a good, relationship with them. I, checked in on them. I gave them Christmas cards. They dropped by and we talked about kids and, grandkids and all that kind of stuff. Like they haven't heard anything from them in 3 days. What's going on with this person? that same feeling you're feeling of frustration right now is the exact way your employees are going to feel if you're not being transparent with them. So I think we can almost have to use the examples that a lot of people are going through right now is how not to interact with your clients or your employees or your team when the chips are falling in the positions that they're falling right now.
So that's obviously the unemployment side. I think you guys, before I got on, were talking through extending AP terms out as well, right? So, and you guys are talking through strategic on that, but I'm also going to say there's time for desperation. You know, there's clients that I've seen receive the letter where customers just send out the letter saying, hey, we're only paying 90 days now. Sorry about your luck. Like, we're just doing it blanket across the board. We just changed our payment terms to 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
Done.
Yeah.
Because they know they're not going to have sales, right? So they just took the cold hard thing. And now you also need to be prepared if you're taking those actions. You may lose suppliers. Let's just be honest here, right? But I think,
I mean, I've also seen vendors sending out letters to their clients or customers saying, listen, I understand the situation that you're in right now, but understand that we're also a small business, and you paying us when you can is vital to the survival of our company. I had one small, it's 5:30, excuse me. I had one small distributor reach out, send me an email saying that exact thing. And I'm like, before I was basically just not paying anybody except the farmers for one client. And after that, I'm like, damn, she got me. She tugged right on those heartstrings and it worked. So, you know, it works. It does.
we're also seeing some vendors going to COD. Like, they're just eliminating terms, right? So to increase their AR side, they're just not doing it anymore. You know, they have enough AR outstanding that's not getting paid, and they said we can't do that, right? Like, for us to survive, the only way we can deliver is if we get paid on delivery. Could be a solution for you, right? But once again, I think you have to balance that with your culture. But I'm also going to go back to survival wins out over culture every time, probably.
Well, I think that's a good point too, right? I mean, this is one of those times, and it's hard to have this discussion with some organizations. And I'm not saying this is from my organization, because I really like the team that I work with, and I think they do a great job. But there are times where you have some people who aren't meeting the expectation that you have, whether you like them, whether you don't, whether you need to trim or not. Like, this is and I hate to say it's a good opportunity, but it is that position where you do have a little bit of upside in this space of determining what makes the most sense for your movement as an organization through that process as well, because unemployment's at 10 million right now. I mean, and again, it's not saying like we're trying to communicate best available options, right? I mean, there's some really good people that are out there that when things start picking back up, that even if you had to have conversations with your team, you may find some really good replacements. Those people who are getting laid off or who are unemployment right now aren't the same people that were there 3, 6, 7 months ago. And even from that standpoint, aren't that standard thought process that you've had. I mean, restaurant industry right now, I'm sure you could go out on the unemployment line and figure out a really stellar rock star group of people to bring into your organization that have all the backbone and skill set and things that you need. You just got to figure out how to serve the food, right? Whether it's bringing in and creating up some sort of packaging food function like we talked about yesterday, or going down some other road. There's going to be some great resources that are available out there as things start picking up. And so there is a little bit of upside to this process too. The hope is that we're all just not clamoring at the same time for the same 3 applicants as well, trying to figure out, who gets up the list. And now we're a price war again, which is kind of what we have been for the last couple of months with some positions.
And I think to that point, not just your own team, but your vendors. So not truly the employees, but look at your team as a whole. Who's helping you provide service? Who are you getting your supplies from? Because other businesses are shut down now, and suppliers are looking for people who will buy from them many times, right? So if you're can take those steps now, you may get a vendor that's better off that you didn't have an opportunity to get before because they are looking for new work or new customers. So obviously things are slower right now for many of businesses, many of our clients, I think. Life isn't moving as rapidly. They're not stuck in working in their business as much because there's just not as much going on in their business. So take this time to step back, relook at your entire operation. How can we improve it? What can we do? Cash runway, back to that conversation. Have you reviewed all the subscriptions you signed up for? Let's just get really simple here, right? When things are growing really fast and operations are going good, nobody thinks about that $10 subscription. And before long, you have 20 of them. And nobody thinks about any of them. So have you reviewed those? Start looking into those things and saying, okay, let's cut some of those. That extends your cash runway out once again, right? So it's not just your vendor terms, maybe the bills that you're paying every time. What's auto charging to your card? Sometimes that's the easiest place to start saving money.
I think to your point, Jacob, I mean, that's the easiest place to start, right? As you're going down, if you're at the point now where you have to make some really tough decisions on what your next steps are, this was one of those moments where you start simple, right? Pull up your profit and loss or your bank statement. If you don't have a GL software that you're using or anything like that, and just click export and sort that information by vendor name or by line item or however you want to do it from that standpoint, and make those determinations. Put 3 columns next to it. Is this essential to core operations? Is this something that maybe round 2 that we decided to get rid of? And is this something that's completely non-essential? Cut the non-essential stuff. I mean, that's stuff you don't have to have right now. I mean, it may be the water supply to your office. Maybe you have a water delivery service. I mean, I know we were all buying water bottles like crazy, 3 weeks ago because we thought the world was coming to an end. But if no one's in your office, shut the water supply service off, right? Make sure that things are being done correctly there. If you have a paper shredding service in your organization, I mean, and no one's in the office, again, no reason for that guy to stop by trying to pick up a bag of paper that doesn't exist. Tell him that you'll let him know when you're ready to come back. Set those expectations. Cut off software that you don't need, that's not essential to what you need to do. And put some tighter controls around the cash outflow and how things are going from that standpoint. It's also kind of a good opportunity too to, if you have the option, cancel one of your, say your card was stolen or something from that standpoint. So anything that's automatic on it completely stops, right? You're immediately going to get a whole lot of emails from those vendors saying, hey, we need some, we want money from you. So you're going to know real quick. I mean, becomes a little bit tough in some situations, but if you have the flexibility to do that, that's actually not a bad approach to go down that road, to be able to put yourself in that good position. I think it's also one of those things too, you have to be very careful with where you place things in the bins as well. What's actually truly essential versus what's non-essential through that process, and what resources are you getting from those things and how you're working through that space. And I've had some people who have asked me, like, how do you address that with your own services? Because for some businesses, they may feel like, maybe my accounting isn't, the most important thing to me. It may be one of those ones where you can negotiate a rate. I mean, I've had plenty of clients who've reached out to us regarding what we can do, and we have that discussion. We might not be able to do all of the things that we had before for that price, but if we cut the list down, will this work for 2 or 3 months while we work through this process? I know there's a lot of accountants out there who feel that that's, not okay to do that, but that's an approach that we've taken as an organization that I feel like is our way of saying we're concerned about our clients and making sure that we're doing what's best and hope that their businesses return. And we're doing what we can right now to help them through that process.
Yeah, and I think something to think about there is, even if you get a PPP loan and it funds next week, or it funds this week, right? Whenever we finally get funding on some of those, there's only certain approved expenses there anyways, right? You can only use that for payroll, rent, and utilities. So it's really important to step back and say, what else do we have running out of there? Because if we don't have a lot of revenue coming in, we have to be prepared to how do we cover the rest of the expenses? Because you do not want to use your PPP loan for those items. Based upon the requirements there and the forgiveness calculation, you do not want to touch that for those things. So starting to look at this, looking at your vendor supply, looking at your recurring charges, those expenses other than your team, rent and utilities are really important, even if you're getting a PPP loan. Don't let that go.
You should also do
For sure.
your research on your utility vendors, because some of them will allow you to set up payment plans so that you can pay it over the next 12 months. There are telecommunication companies like Comcast that are offering heavy discounts or deferred payments. There is quite a wide range of options that you have with those utility companies. So you should really take a look and see what you can do right from the portal. It's not like you even have to call them. Like National Grid, you can set up a payment plan right from your online portal. It's not a problem at all.
Awesome.
Yeah,
And they're also the ones you can pay the latest.
yeah.
Like you can string them along forever before they shut you off.
In many states implemented a no utility turnoff during this time,
Yeah.
right? So you could just skip paying your utilities and no one's going to shut it off, right?
Yeah.
So that's an easy one when we're talking about extending payment terms. Boom, done, right? Like we just didn't pay our utilities. It'll come back. Obviously, if you have a PPP loan, you're going to want to pay them to get that amount forgiven. But until you get that, why are you wasting cash on your utilities?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Why are you wasting it?
I've seen some cities delay or defer property tax payments. So that's one you want to look up. I've seen some cities, like you said, prevent evictions, prevent landlords from doing stuff. So everyone is kind of trying to figure out how to make this work. If you as a business owner, you're struggling, reach out to some of your local leaders or your state leaders and let them know what you're going through, because they may be unaware of your specific industry or your specific situation, and they may want to pass a bill or pass something locally that helps businesses like you with a stimulus or with something. So I think those are really important. I think transparency is definitely the name of the game here. Being transparent of where you're at with your vendors, with your customers, working with them to work through this, because everyone's going through the same situation. And also understand there's going to be vendors and customers that are actually doing really well right now. They position themselves to do well during this time, and they may be even more understandable to your situation and want to offer something to you to help you along. Some of the standout vendors that have already been proactive, some of the software companies, some of the ones that have offered discounts or deferment of payments, or for new customers, free use of their software. Those have been really, really great to see.
Square has waived all of their fees for the month of April.
That's amazing.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Didn't Amazon cut out a big bunch of their fees as well?
Yeah, Amazon did as well. And I mean, with Square, you're going, wow, Square's probably already seeing an impact in their business. And for them to do that, to double down and go, well, we're going to waive fees at the same time. That's amazing.
Yeah.
To see that response. So that would be very interesting. Just very interesting to reach out to your vendors and ask. It doesn't hurt to ask. The worst answer you're going to get is no.
Yeah.
So,
And I think the one piece to that too is to not be afraid of who that vendor is, right?
Uh-huh.
I mean, we talked about two really large vendors for a lot of people, right? Some of the largest processors for merchant transactions or even retail sales in the United States. Both of them have said, we're just going to do this proactively. But there are other vendors and softwares that you can reach out to and ask them straight up, hey, I just need to save the extra $50, $100, $200 right now. What options do you have available to me? I know we talked about this on Monday. I mean, Gusto has put it in from a payroll standpoint and has given you the option, if you have already, put all your employees on, bereavement or, whatever it is, on unemployment. If you're not paying anybody, they're going to wipe your fees, or they're just going to clear them out. They're going to keep your account active until you're ready to come back, or they're giving you an option to defer your payment. So they're giving you a few months of reprieve for you to catch back up to kind of work through that same process as well, which I think is really cool. I think it's a really convenient piece. One of the questions I just wanted to touch on this, which I think is a little bit different than what we have been talking about, but I still think it's a really good tone to bring up, which is, what do you do when you actually receive this money for the PPP, right? You know, you guys, Michael and Jacob, both talked about the significance or the limitations of what you can spend that money on, right? We know payroll is a big part of it. 8 weeks of that's, you know, is up for it. Utilities is a part of it, rent, as well as, you know, mortgage interest is another piece that goes along with it. So the question comes into place, how do I make sure that I track this correctly so that when we come to this forgiveness period, which we don't know what the forgiveness guidelines or requests are going to be from most banks. I've seen a few small kind of introductory lists, but I think that's going to change as we, you know, as we get closer to this process. So probably 6 or 7 weeks from now, we're going to start getting a list of things we need to start stacking together and preparing for. But the question got brought up is, do you put it in a separate bank account to keep it isolated from your regular cash? I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. I know I have my own opinions, but I share those a lot. So
we are recommending a separate bank account for tracking purposes. That's our recommendation.
Yeah,
plain and simple, right?
It's easier to run. You can run a profit and loss by a cash account. You can use that bank account as that P&L. That makes it very easy for you to see how that money is getting spent. And really, you know, what is it to transfer that money? It's nothing.
Yeah.
So it's a separate repository that you can keep all of that money. You can transfer it into your operating account with the exact amount that you're using, or you spend the money directly out of that account. Either way, we have no idea what the forgiveness of this bill is going to be like. Like we have rough ideas of what it's going to be that's forgivable, but like we might find something out very quickly that we were not anticipating that they had originally said. It's very obvious that they don't really care about what the previous guidance says.
Yeah. And I think it's easy enough just to, in your mind, because we talked about this too, treat that money for what the purpose of it is. It's not boat money. It's not, you know, I mean, it's not getting special things or, you know, or events or any of that kind of stuff from it. Can you zoom in on that? It's a little small.
Yeah, that's this. They just updated the fact with a couple extra questions.
Oh,
but
good.
I noticed this at the bottom. To your point exactly, Dan. The period during which borrowers will be subject to restrictions on the allowable use of the loans may extend beyond the period of June 30th. So they are going to hold that it can only be used for rent, utilities, or payroll longer than the June 30th. So if you have money left over, those restrictions are still going to stick around. And that's new. Like I didn't see that before. So just since you were saying it, I thought I would double.
But what I like about that too, though, is that gives you a little bit of runway for use for payroll, right? I mean, to that point, I know there's a lot of people that I've spoken to in the last little bit that are concerned of, maybe I don't need it absolutely today, but I'm seeing a very heavy downturn in my sales. It's not going to be this month that I need it. It's going to be 2 months from now. And so that disclosure really helps from that standpoint, because it gives you that frame of mind of there's still some availability to use that resource for its intended purpose. Just get it now so it doesn't run out, right? Before it's all gone and no one else can get it from that standpoint. But I think that's really convenient, especially if you set up a new bank account to isolate it from other things so that you can keep those funds in a separate process.
Guys, we're running on 40 minutes, so thought we'd wrap this up and have some more content for people tomorrow to talk about. Thanks for leading the discussion, Dan, and getting us through this. Hope everyone has a great week. And if you have any questions, feel free to post on Facebook so we can answer either on Facebook or tomorrow on our next update. So talk to everyone soon. Bye.